don't really care what your politics or your worldview are. They're just really good for the community. And as a bonus, they reverse global warming. So we gathered lots of folks together. We did a kickoff meeting. We did this kind of brainstorming stuff. Then at the end, we chose. You can just keep running through these slides and I'll talk faster. We did a lot of dot voting. We did a robust evaluation, and then we chose a solution, and it had to be these three things. It had to be able to be done in a year or two, able to be done by us volunteers, no professional stuff's needed, and it needed to be something that wasn't going to happen without our effort. And we did it. So you can just go past this. It's a cool little video though. So we've done compost. Just keep going fast. In a nutshell, oh wait, not that fast. Go back. It is pretty simple though. The first solution we chose was community compost. So many of you have participated and volunteered. It's a huge success that we should feel very proud of as a community. Okay, now you can go next. There were, I think our linchpin of success was cute baby goats and piglets and chickens. And really what it became was diverting food scraps from the landfill that would have otherwise turned into methane and caused a lot of warming in our area, and feeding chickens instead, piglets, goats, and helping farms. And we've done a lot of community outreach and education over the past couple of years. Okay, keep going. And this is Jeremy, and he's really taken it and run with it. He helped us get a huge grant from the USDA, $120,000 brought into our community. There's some really impressive numbers up here. We've diverted a lot of food scraps, got more and more participation every day from businesses and community members, and we've got that big grant. So lots of feathers in the cap for the community, and it's going forward more quickly. Alice, what do you have to say? Alice was the linchpin behind Solarize the Kenai. She basically ran the whole program, and she got this like 150 sites, right, to put solar panels on their houses. It was really cool. She's amazing, and we did that in 2020. Actually, Ben did it with her help, and then in 2021, Tim did it again. Tim was here. He's our tech. Oh, he's in the back still. Tim is our tech guru and overachieving volunteer extraordinaire. And we even, the huge success last year was that Seward redid their whole city net metering so that they could get solar panels put in their community. So there's just a lot of really great successes that have come from the community figuring out what can we do at the community level. And I think it's been some of the most elegantly direct, big change that we could have hoped to do. Okay, keep going. Okay, there we go. Now Mitch gets to talk.
All right, so surprise me with the next slide, which is always good. My name is Mitch, by the way, and there's going to be 3 panelists, but just quickly, I'm not going to give you my whole life story, but I think I was 5 or 6 years old, and my mom and dad took us out to plant trees. Didn't do a lot at that age. And I've been planting trees for 53 years now, and I just finished planting trees at the Crane Beast Park. That was the last trees I planted. I really don't like planting trees because if we did things right, we wouldn't have to. But the way we are, planting trees sometimes I tell everybody it's the most nourishing thing you can do. You got a problem, life's not going well, you got COVID, plant a tree. It solves all those psychological problems you may have. So tonight we're going to have 3 speakers, and Jim Renkert, he is with the Alaska Community Forestry Program Coordinator. I was going to give him a new title, but that might involve greater money for him. But he'll talk about the community programs across the whole state and give a rundown of what that program he runs. And it's also, of course, a source of some money. It's also a great source of education about tree planting and their benefits. And then Nancy Casey, who's a local landscape architect, she's going to talk about tree planting at that individual, that one single tree. And you know, one single tree in the world of all of our climate change issue is not a lot. But, you know, we have 4 billion people here on the earth, and if we all planted one tree, that would be 4 billion trees. I have a goal, I told this to Meryl earlier, it says I want to see 50,000 trees planted in the next year or so. And I think we could plant 50, I think we could plant 100,000 if we really planned it right. How to do that? I'm not going to do it. I'll plant a couple of hundreds. And Nancy can talk about the individual trees and their values. And Dakota is a newcomer to the Kenai Peninsula. She had been involved in the drawdown, aware of it from where you were from before. And where exactly are you from, Dakota? From Hawaii. Okay, all right. I didn't know that. West Dakota. Yeah. All right. And she'll talk about some of the efforts that the Kenai Peninsula Borough is doing and how we can have an integrated project. So I'd like to start with Jim. Jim, are you on? Jim is in Anchorage.
I am on, thank you.
Okay. Can we get the volume up? Maybe, or can you stand closer to the mic, Jim?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can everybody else?
Yeah, we're gonna try to turn the volume up for you. All right. Something I didn't know about Jim.
I'm not playing that. I wish I could.
All right, BB's gone. Jim is here now. All right, go ahead.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to share. I've got a little presentation here. Can I do a share screen?
Yeah. Ben's working on it.
Okay. While he's working on that, I'll just quickly introduce myself. Thank you, Mitch, for that introduction. Just a little more background. My name is Jim Reichert. I am the Alaska Community Forestry Program Coordinator with the Alaska Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry, soon to be the Division of Forestry and Wildlife Management. We've officially changed our name, and it will take effect in July.
You should be able to share the screen now, Jim.
Okay. And can you see that? Can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes,
Yes, we can. Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. All right, well, I'll get up along with this in just a second. Community forestry is part of DNR. Our funding actually comes from the United States Forest Service. A little bit more on my background. I am an Anchorage homeboy. I've been with the department for a little over 30 years. And a long, long time ago, I spent the summer working at the Kasilof Small Boat Harbor. And I lived at Marge Mullins, who is an old family friend. And I'm really hoping to get down to the peninsula for her birthday this June. And even before I worked at the boat harbor, I had a science teacher in 8th grade by the name of Tanya Spurkland. Hi, Tanya. How are you doing? It's great to see you that you're on this. So I have a few slides here that I'll try to run through. So our mission of the Community Forestry Program is to help communities build effective, self-sustaining community forestry programs with strong local support. Community forest lands provide essential benefits that we cannot live without. Healthy community forest helps solve community problems. Healthy community forest lands don't happen by chance. It's a result of proper planning, management, and community investment. And community wild forest lands are connected. Proper management of one helps the other. I'm sure many of you have heard of the urban and wild and urban interface. So as part of our program, we have a Citizens Community Forest Council made up of 15 people. It's a nonprofit advisory board to this program. It's also its own 501c3. Mitch is on the council. We love having Mitch on it. He's been a tremendous resource. We are always looking for new members. So we're in the process, we're always looking for new people. So if you might be interested, we'd love to, we'd love to get some new people involved. I particularly want to get people outside of Anchorage. I'd like to get some more people from the peninsula. So some of the programs that we're involved with, we work a lot with the Arbor Day Foundation. They have a program called Tree City USA. These are some of the communities that are Tree City USAs in Alaska. You'll notice that none of them are from the peninsula. There's also the Tree Line USA program for electric utilities. We have 3 in Alaska: Chugach Electric, Golden Valley Electric, and MEA. Love to get Homer as part of that. Then there's the Tree Campus Higher Education Program. We only have 1 right now, and that's UAA. But we have some prospective ones: University of Alaska Fairbanks, obviously Matsu College, Alaska Pacific University, and how about Kenai Peninsula College? Could be a great candidate for Tree Campus Higher Education. Just a few years ago, the Arbor Day, lost a slide there. Let me go back here one. Okay, well, we've got another program called the Tree Campus. Actually, I'll get to that. Yeah, sorry, I am not out of line. One of the things we assist communities in doing is forest management plans and forest land assessments. Anchorage did one back in 2010, but it actually wasn't finalized till just a few years ago. Another thing that Anchorage did just a few years ago, they invited our program to be part of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan, which had 7 different sectors, including an urban forest and watershed section. I think in the intro here, I saw something about the peninsula. It looks like you've done something similar. But if you're interested, this Anchorage plan could be a resource for you to take a look at. It has a number of recommendations and suggestions on urban forests and watersheds, which I'd be happy to provide more information on. Other services our program provides, there's technical assistance, education and training, tree planting, websites. We have a website and Facebook. We have a number of publications. We have lots of Arbor Day Foundation bulletins. We have lots of copies of those. We'd be happy to send you. This was a class we put on with Jim Flott, community forestry consultant. This is demonstrating the use of an air spade at UAA. The other thing, service we provide is financial assistance in the form of grants. We have a number of different grant programs. And we've been providing grants to since 1991. I was just looking at some of the ones we provided on the peninsula historically. Soldotna and Kenai, Homer, Sterling have all gotten grants, both historically and more recently. One of the grant programs actually, this is the biggest grant program we've ever administered, is our prunus control grants. As many of you may know, Prunus patus, Prunus virginiana, known as Mayday trees or European bird cherry, have become an issue in Alaska. They were introduced as attractive ornamentals and are now considered invasive. Prunus patus is especially aggressive and is now rapidly invading riparian streams and forests in South Central Alaska, Fairbanks, and Juneau. The Homer Soil and Water Conservation District got a grant from us 2 years ago, did an excellent job, and they're in the process of getting another one from us. Some other programs we run in conjunction with the Arbor Day Foundation, we have a thing called the Community Recovery Grant. Anchorage got one a couple of years ago. The Parks and Recreation Department applied for, received it. Arbor Day Foundation helped find corporate sponsors that donated a total of over $23,000 to plant 500 trees in Anchorage. As part of that, 100 trees are given away at the 2020 and 2021 Alaska Virtual Run for Women. Another 100 will be given away at the 2022 event this June, which will be in person. So retree your community. Got some suggestions for you. Celebrate Arbor Day in Alaska. Plant trees. Arbor Day in Alaska is officially the third Monday of May every year. But many communities either plant on that day or before or afterwards. This is some kids from the Paul Banks Elementary School who got a small grant from us a few years ago. This is a group in Fairbanks planting trees. Another thing you could do is start the process for Soldotna, Kenai, and Homer to be certified as Arbor Day Foundation Tree City USAs. Guess we can throw Seward in there too. Start the process for Kenai Peninsula College to be certified as a tree campus higher education. And encourage Kenai, Kiski, Soldotna, all the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District schools to be certified as Tree Campus K-12. That's a new program. And we don't have any school yet that is the Tree Campus K-12. So who will be the first in Alaska? You become the first, you'll have some pretty serious bragging rights. Encourage Homer Electric Association to be certified as a Tree Line USA. Another thing you could do is update the City of Soldotna's Urban Forest Management Plan. It's 10 years old. Encourage Kenai and Homer to develop a community forest plan. We can assist with helping you on that. And apply for an Arbor Day Foundation Community Recovery Grant. City of Kenai was looking into this a couple of years ago and even had a site selected and didn't quite get it done. But I know the Arbor Day Foundation would be very interested in helping out. So remember, trees are the answer. So that's what I've got. Here's my contact information. And I'd be happy to answer any questions either now or because maybe there's going to be a panel a little bit later.
All right, thanks you, Jim. That was good. I'm glad you mentioned all the sources of money. One of the important things is that it's not money that plants trees, it's actually people. So that's what money is helpful, by the way, but it takes a couple many hands to do it. So next is, what's the next slide, Ben? So
Jim, if you would stop your screen share.
And maybe we'll listen to B.B. King again. All right, so I'll go through these slides and then we'll have Nancy. Nancy, are you on?
Yes, I'm here finally. Sorry about that. I was using the Google link.
All right, okay, so I'm gonna go through a couple of slides and then you're gonna give a quick presentation or tell us about the landscaping side of things. All right.
All right. Yep.
All right, so you're probably seeing this screen. All right, so there's been a lot, as Jim said, there's a lot. We'll go back a little bit one more. There was a lot of projects that we are planting trees every year, by the way. This is not new, we plant trees, but I think we could do so much more.
We actually are not, we're not seeing your screen actually, Mitch.
Okay, thanks for that, because I was gonna ask Ben how many people are zoomed in to us.
Yep, now you're good.
All right, so we have been doing a lot of tree planting on the Kenai Peninsula. We've been doing it for years, by the way, but I think a concerted effort could just push us right over the edge. Maybe that's not a good term, but Rotary does annual. There's a wonderful gal, her name is Kathy Hindle, and every year she has a Rotary project where they're always planting trees. They plant a couple of hundred trees. They plant some at the Crane Beast Park. Caring for the Kenai, Meryl was talking about earlier, it was Christy Leaf's daughter did a massive tree planting. Thousands of trees were planted next to the soccer fields. And that was a Caring for the Kenai project she had done. Peace Crane Park, they got a small grant from Credit Union One. I wanted to throw that in there because there are corporate sponsors, there are corporations out there. There's even a credit card that will plant a tree for every $1 you spend. I don't know which it is. That's not my credit card. there's a City of Soldado beautification program, and that's part of their front facade program. I think all the trees that the Parks Department is planting. Migrant worker school program. This was something that trees were planted at Kenai Peninsula College, and it has to do with Tanya Sperklin. She's on here, introduced me to it. And there's a program where they take kids and families who are migrant, and by the way, migrant workers are people who work in fish processing, mostly. And they planted 75 trees last year, and then and there's a nonprofit tree sale, and this is a nonprofit I'm involved with, and we deliver between 4,000 and 5,000 trees every year to the Kenai Peninsula, and these things get planted. And everybody calls me the week after the tree sale is done, and they say, "Can I get some trees?" And I said, "You gotta contact us in January." By the way, we're sold out that weekend. So next slide. So this, we don't have a finite project. We're not going to say we're going to do this or we're going to do that, and that's where we're looking for feedback from everybody here and who's zooming in. Host some educational, but ideally we could come up with a goal. How do we want to do it? We want to go big. Do we want to go big and small? Do we want to plant? We want to have a community, cities get more involved. Do we want to? So I'm leaving. I can come up with answers, but it's just the scary thing is when a professional or somebody who knows something comes up and gives you answers. Oftentimes I just get nods, yes, and then it may not be the right answer because I'm just one person in like the 23,000 people that live here and seek funding. So next slide. These are quick. Oh yeah, we're about 6 trillion trees on the planet. Half of them are gone. There's that if we restored and planted 1 trillion trees, we would actually get back to where we were before the pre-industrial revolution. Next slide. What could a reach? That's what I'm talking. And I would pose these questions to all the proceeders and to everybody here, by the way. So think about it. It says, who's going to plant the trees? What are we going to plant? Where are we going to plant them? When and how? Which is how are we going to pay for it? So next slide. Who? Okay, I already said this. Who would maintain them? By the way, oh yeah, you know what the average lifespan of a city tree is? It's like 4 years. And so can you imagine being the poor? Can you be Andrew Carmichael? Everybody knows Andrew probably. Andrew plants a tree in the city, and the average life of that tree is only 4 years. The good thing about it is it's the same place that they plant the tree that the tree dies. So there's a couple that live up to be like 30, 40, 50 years, but it's just that one tree. So it's the average.
Do you know why they only live 4 years?
It's the average.
So there's just a high mortality rate among the.
Right, there's a corner on spruce and elm or whatever, and that tree always gets hit by the snowplow. So that tree dies every year. It kind of brings the average down. In the classroom, there's always somebody that gets a low score and it brings the curve down. Luckily, that's how I got through college. All right. So, what should we plant? Yep. And where should they be planted? And I think there's a lot of reasons for planting trees in our backyard. We can all say what was special to us, but there's some trees that we plant that are important to what our community was. I see my neighbor today. Every day I see my neighbor when he drives away, right? He's a nice guy, but do I really? It's not why I moved there. I mean, and the trees died. And it's the nature of why we moved here. We came here into the wilderness and we carved out a small spot. And then wished we had trees, so we planted a couple, and now they're all dying. So, next slide. I think that should be. When would this happen? This summer, next summer, continually, one big day. It'd be really cool to plant 50,000 trees in one day. Really might not be reasonable, but you guys can tell me. Individuals, government, neighborhoods. I had this whole Al-Qaeda thing. You remember them? That was before we had COVID, and they had these like terrorist cells. I always said we should have tree planting cells. We have these little, corporate groups all over the community, and they have their own little neighborhood, and they just do clandestine tree planting in their backyards. They don't tell anybody. There's no permits involved, and they plant something wild like a balsam fir and drive foresters like me in Dakota, and that's why we're planting balsam fir here. And then we're embarrassed because the thing lives. I mean, prove us wrong. Prove us wrong. tree is good for the community and individuals. We're gonna go until I run out of slides here, I hope, so. I'm gonna get there. Okay, now we're gonna go to Nancy. Nancy, you on?
Yep, I'm here.
All right, so if you have slides, we can show them. If
Well,
not,
I didn't until just now. I just threw a bunch of tree pictures together because I apologize. I didn't know we were doing slides. I'm sorry. But I can share my screen. Right?
Just a second, Nancy, we're not seeing you.
No, you're not.
No, we're not seeing your screen.
Are you seeing me? There we are. Hello, everybody. I am the local landscape architect. I'm going to, you disabled my screen sharing, so you need to.
all right, we got it. We got you. We see you now.
All right, you should be able to screen share, Nancy.
Try it again. There we go. I think it's this one. I have 3 screens, so it's a little hard sometimes.
All right, I think we got you.
Let me see if I can get the tree one up. Where did it go? So now do you see some trees?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is just some eye candy while I talk, but coincidentally, I was just attending the ASLA Alaska chapter, which is American Society of Landscape Architects annual meeting today. And we talked a lot about sounds and how, and I thought this would be a great segue because the sounds of our environment, other than the human produced ones, if you just sit and you're walking or sitting outside, who pays attention to those anymore? We're always on our phone, we're on our music or doing something else, but those actual sounds of nature are very healing and very necessary now in our times of kind of a lot of emotional or mental health issues that we're having. So trees are the source of habitat for birds and squirrels and all the stuff that makes those sounds. So that's another reason. Hold on, I'm going to shut the door here. The dog opened the door. So that's one more reason to have a diversity of trees in our communities. Alaska isn't known for its tree diversity, and I can speak pretty firsthand with that with my plant list that I use when I do planting plans. But we do have a growing number of trees that can survive here, including maples that are being experimentally planted and enjoyed in Anchorage. We of course have a couple varieties of larch. There's Siberian larch, and there's also European larch. Of course, we've got our traditional trees like spruce and birch. Here's an example of a deciduous larch in my yard that is probably 50 years old, maybe more, from the 60s. It's humongous, and it's the bird condo. I tell you, birds really, there's a lot of bird activity in there. Blue spruce, which don't thrive too terribly well in a lot of our yards, but it is another type of diversity that will help our landscape survive, attacks from predators like, fungus or virus or bugs, as we all too well know. The more diversity we can have, the more resilient we will be. We also have a Scots pine in our yard that is, again, 50 years old, and it's quite big. Not very many of them around, and that the original homesteader here got the seeds for this when he visited Norway in the 60s. So it is truly a Scots pine. It is not a lodgepole. Other varieties of birch, we have the Kenai birch, the white paper birch. We've also got weeping birch. So the more diversity we can get, the better. So those are my photos that I grabbed real quick while Mitch was talking. And Oh, aspen, just the standard quaking aspen, but also this is the columnar aspen, which can be used. I guess the quaking didn't come up, did it? That's okay. So I don't really know what else to talk about, Mitch. I guess I think we're going to get into some of the brainstorming. We're going to talk about mini nurseries. That's my little favorite topic because we've had a mini nursery here at our house since we've lived here for 20 some years. And it's really fun to dig up little tiny trees and 5 years later, see how huge they are and share them with our friends and neighbors. So I think we're all capable of having a mini nursery if we really wanted to. So finding the sources for these trees is going to be one of the challenges. So each and every one of us can help with that.
All right, thank you, Nancy. I like your comment about the tree nursery because one of the questions that always comes up is where do we get these trees? And nationally, there is a predicted shortage of trees. It would take a 10-fold increase of tree nursery and pre-nursery production in the US to meet the anticipated need.
Yeah.
And needless to say, we're at the short end of this milk run, by the way, the tree milk run, because we do not produce a lot of trees. We don't have commercial production of trees.
Right. I mean, the deciduous or the Larix decidua that we have in our yard, the larch, it seeds and we find the babies everywhere that we just dig up and protect. So the mower doesn't get them or the moose. And I mean, it's pretty prolific. You know, we can't grow our own. Aspens are really tough. You can't very easily transplant them. They don't like their roots cut from the mother tree and they're almost impossible to transplant aspen, but birch and spruce and larch are really easy to transplant. Yep.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things we can do. I know a couple of years ago too, we were going to have a tree transplanting session here at Soldotna library, and we were going to go out and go find a tree somewhere in this area and dig it up and show people how to properly transplant trees. COVID hit, and yeah, I'm getting tired of blaming everything on COVID. So maybe I can milk it for another 3 months. But yeah, there's a lot of solutions. But if you're going to plant 25,000 trees, digging up 25,000 trees is really, but if you want to transplant 1 tree or 3 trees or 4 trees, that's a very cost-effective way of doing it. So digging up a tree is, but it's, but if you're going to be planting 1,000 trees a day, if you're going to hire a professional planter, that's digging them up is hard.
I also wanted to speak to the diversity that we can find just in the spruce family. You know, there's white spruce, blue spruce, there's Colorado green spruce, Black Hills spruce. There's a lot of varieties that we can grow here that help, you know, give them more resilience.
Okay, Dakota, are you ready? You can, Dakota is a land management. She's also a forester. That's how I know her as a forester. And so if you can tell us a little bit about the Burrow project and how Burrow could integrate with the backyard tree planting.
Thank you. Hi, Dakota Truitt, land management agent with the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And the major thing that we are focusing on right now at the borough is standing up their spruce bark beetle mitigation program hand in hand with reforestation. Oh, good. Oh, good. So everyone will see me turn red. I am a forester. I'm used to being in the woods, so public speaking is me. But so this question of reforestation comes up again and again as we try to deal with that dead component of spruce on the landscape. We keep getting asked, well, what are we putting back on the landscape? Is it going to be willow just so that we have a cover crop per se, so that we have something growing on the landscape rapidly to outcompete that the blue joint and that grassland conversion? Or is it going to be spruce? And what's the value of spruce on the landscape right now, considering that, you know, it went from a 150-year-old tree to now a 30-year-old tree that we will likely lose when spruce bark beetle rolls through again and again and again. It's not going away. So we're looking at this question of how can we assist in the migration of trees that are more climate adapted for this new age of, or this new biome that we're looking at moving into. And And what is the value of diversity on the landscape at a large scale? Because we have 21,000 acres of borough managed land that's in and around our communities of Cooper Landing, Moose Pass, Nikiski, Kenai, Saldana, all the way down to Casilla, where the beetle's really hitting right now. And we don't know what to plant back. We don't have a seed source. So we're looking at, okay, mountain hemlock exists in small pockets. Can we expedite that migration of mountain hemlock? Is it going to succeed in these areas? And we're just trying to, so the main thing we're trying to do is look for grant funding in order to support the local nursery infrastructure that we need. We want a nursery on the Kenai Peninsula. We want a producer in Alaska. And so we're working with the Alaska Division of Forestry and the Homer Soil and Water Conservation District, trying to partner to see what it takes to have a nursery start here and what we can do to support our private local nurseries as well. Whether that's going to be putting in order right now to try to prosper, assist in their tree growth, or seeing if we can have more agricultural land leases for local nurseries, because we have this agricultural initiative that goes hand in hand with spruce bark beetle mitigation. And so that is in a nutshell what we're trying to do. I'll hand it back to Mitch. Oh, okay.
Stay up there, so we don't have, you know, it's blank spot. Right, there's a couple, yeah, so, right. So I was out back having some soup. It was Willow King. If you hadn't come in person, you get to have a food donation from Willow. And so what we're gonna have now is a Q&A. So we'll start with folks that are here. And if you have any questions, let me know, or ask us, and we'll answer them, maybe.
Hi guys, I had two questions. One of them was, what is the process like for a private citizen who wants to help plant trees on public lands? Because I imagine right now the city of Soldotna would not be super happy with me if I just went and put a tree. Even if there's tons of dead spruce trees over there, which is the key problem, would love to go plant trees over there, but I don't want to guerrilla plant trees on Soldotna's land. The other question I had is, earlier, Jim was talking about invasive tree problems with European bird cherry, but and then Nancy was mentioning maybe trees that are not native to Alaska but will be climate adapted. What's the difference between planting a tree that will be climate adapted and a tree that will be invasive?
Is there anybody in Zoom land that would like to answer that? Jim? That might fall under your wheelhouse.
Okay, I'll take a shot at that. There are, of course, native trees, spruce,
Hang on,
hemlock, and
Jim,
birch.
we're trying to get your audio back up here.
Okay,
Where's Ben?
can you hear me now?
Microphone to the phone.
Let's try it now. How about now?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so native trees, spruce, birch, aspen, and aspen are difficult to transplant. Yeah, those are all, and hemlock, those are all good. What we kind of come to saying is non-native, non-invasives are okay to plant as well. What you want to stay away from are the invasives. We are seeing greater diversity of people planting ornamental trees and orchard trees. But what happened with the bird cherry, it was brought to Alaska, touted as a great ornamental for Alaska. It's hardy, it withstands our climate, very cold temperatures. It has beautiful flowers, beautiful flowers in the spring, smells great. But what it also did is it produced a lot of cherries. Birds ate those, they fly around and deposit them. And so what ended up happening is the bird cherry went feral. So you want to stay away from the trees that we've determined, and now we've determined that are invasive. But the non-natives, non-invasives, those are still good to plant.
Okay, and the other question was, how does the public go out and plant trees? How do private citizens go plant trees on public land? And that's a process question, I guess. I mean, first of all, you need permission. And then you probably want to make sure that the land that you're going to be planting the trees on would not designated for the next, bypass that we're going to have through town, I guess, or whatever. I mean, there's not designated. It's not where the new, I don't know what they would build, but anyway, the new maintenance garage in Kenai. So that would be the process. Again, you don't do it covertly, but I don't think a lot of people do that. I think it's the other way around. I think people go to public land and poach trees and then haul them back to their own. But I think that's a project, and I'll throw this because you brought up a solution is, we have places in our community that are vacant of trees. And that could be a community project where we would identify all the vacant lots that the community has, or the public land, and then say and approach them as a community and says, hey, we like this lot that's in our neighborhood, or there's a waste strip or a right of way next to our houses. We'd like to plant it. And I think that would be the way to approach it, as kind of as a group, as a bunch of neighbors, and then and approach the folks in the city or the borough in doing it. How would that fall with the borough? Go ahead.
So we don't have a process in place because no one's ever wanted to plant trees. But I think this is something that we'd love to hear from the community about, like the Peace Green Gardens. They want to plant trees. There are options available for like community trail agreements if you want to maintain parcels of land for forests. It's something that we'd be really eager to see and really eager to hear from the community about. In terms of non-native, non-invasives too, I tend to lean towards looking at how they propagate or how they reproduce. And my thought process is, if it's going to be, if it reproduces really easily, like vegetatively, deciduous trees produce vegetatively really fast, very prolific. We're a little nervous about introducing new species because we can have situations like the choke cherry take over and really harmful to moose. So is it edible? Okay, can the wildlife eat it? Is it going to cause problems with the current wildlife we have? And how is it going to proliferate on the landscape? And I think just looking at those two options, you can experiment with what we want to plant.
All right, got another question.
Yeah, you mentioned that the spruce beetle is going to be a persistent problem. Is it worth the effort to replant spruce trees? So if we overwhelm them? How would we go about combating it?
Right. Right. I don't know which came first, the spruce. Oh, okay. The question was, you talked. I heard the question. Now everybody will hear it. The question was, we know that spruce bark beetle are persistent and they're always here, and they always have been here. I don't know which came first. It was probably the spruce before the spruce beetle, and that even if it would take the total elimination of all spruce off this peninsula to eliminate the spruce bark beetle. So that pretty close. I mean, because it's part of their life cycle. You'd have to interrupt their life cycle. The key to trees surviving the spruce bark beetle is the trees have a natural defense to beetles, and it's based on the health and the vigor of that tree. Backyard trees tend to survive very well as long as you keep them watered and you keep them happy, until they get to be 150 to 200 years old. And no matter how much you water me, when I'm 150 years old, I'm going to be susceptible to attack by something. So want to add to that, Dakota?
I think that looking at the question of biodiversity on the landscape, so not just planting spruce, making sure we have those hardwoods, the native hardwoods there as a component as well. So there is something that can make the forest more resilient as well. Different species of spruces are like, so black spruce is really fire prone, and now we're leaning away from really fire prone or fire loving trees because we want to make a fire resilient landscape. And I think that's where we just look to different species. So like lodgepole is also fire loving, but it's existing really well in northern climates right now. There are options of the balsam fir that's doing really well too. So making sure you have a good mix of species helps with the resilience of spruce to spruce bark beetle and forest health. And I'm just gonna, getting forest management into the woods is one of the best things we can do to prepare them for invasions of insects. Because even if we went through and removed all the spruce and replanted all hemlock, okay, now we have a sawfly issue. Something's always going to come and eat the trees. Making sure we have different species there, that there's going to be something left over to replace it. That's what we're looking at.
Okay.
Hello. So I understand that Canada is like the #1 for tree planting, and I was wondering if anybody had any insight to how they do it. I know that they plant millions and millions of trees every year, and you know, generally Canada is pretty similar to Alaska. So
Okay, it just happened. I worked in a Canadian tree nursery. And things are different in Canada. I think things are different in Alaska. Things are really different. And and I'll say most of the trees that were planted, millions of trees were planted in Alaska, all came from the British Columbia, Victoria area. And it was 2 large provincial nurseries, and that were putting out 15 to 20 million trees a year. And they're still putting out 15 to 20 million trees a year. But there's a big reforestation effort in Canada right now. And the reason is because they're reforesting provincial land. So there's a rule in Canada that if you're cutting on provincial land, you will plant trees on provincial land. And that's kind of why we have a tree shortage here, is because they've lost a lot of trees in Canada. They've had all the fires that we've had. There's an equal number of fires that occurred in Canada. Their tree nurseries are heavily subsidized by the federal government. Victoria has this wonderful thing. It's called hydropower. They have a lot of, they're one of those not free electricity provinces, but power cost is low. It's not as cold. Here, it's dark half of the year. It's cold for half of the year, and it's just really, nurseries don't work very, very well here. But they could, as we had a different approach to it. And there is movement, Dakota and folks in the borough are working on some grants to see if we can get a tree nursery established here. Some other groups are doing it. We have an individual in the city, a private contractor, that's starting their own tree nursery. So did I answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay, yes.
the government does it through.
The government can do anything, right? Yeah, right. Sorry, I used to work for them. All right, another question? Bill Arnott.
Okay, Bill Larned, I have a pretty long history here since early 80s. I worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service for the refuge for 8 years before I went back to migratory birds and worked statewide. But anyway, I've been really interested in mountain hemlock. You mentioned mountain hemlock, and we have some very happy mountain hemlocks living out there in small patches where we live is down in Tote Road area. They seem to be very resilient to a lot of things. And I'm involved with Salteshi trails. We're turning into blue joint grass meadow up there. And there's a lot of advantages to something like mountain hemlock, which is dense and a lot of shade and that sort of thing, and attractive. I think they're really awesome, beautiful trees. Just in their regular growth, kind of branching and stuff. But a couple of things that I've noticed. One is that I don't know, is there do they have like a allelopathy going on or something? Because if things do not like growing underneath them, and I don't know whether it's just because they're super shade, produce a lot of shade, or whether there's actually a toxic effect. And do you know anything about that? Because I walked through a lot of them in the woods there. It's like nothing under there but young hemlocks. Right, we should go for a walk. We should have like a field day. You know, we can imagine that we'll go out in the field and field together. Salteshe trails, the ridge that runs along Salteshe there's native mountain hemlock that grows there. And it's regenerating just like the way you were saying, Bill. And it's, I don't think there's an allelopathic, but it's definitely shade. Hemlock is one of the most shade tolerant trees that there is. I mean, the little guy will germinate, little gal will germinate, and will exist in almost complete shade, and all waiting for that opportunity to just snap. The biggest problem in Southeast Alaska from forestry is hemlock. You have a spruce forest and you cut it down and you end up with a hemlock forest, because that's not the natural cycle that restores those spruce forests down on the coastal range. So yes, I think something from a landscaping thing is the right tree in the right place. Hemlock does not like very heavy clayey soils. And then when you look at where your hemlock is, dig a hole and you'll see that it's very coarse and it has some pebbles and some rocks. And it also it requires more water. So that's why you'll see them on flat tops where it emerges. You'll see them at toe slopes. That's why you see them towards Girdwood. You see a lot of hemlock. But you could plant them in your backyard. So.
If anyone in the room has a question, we're about at the end of Q&A, and we're going to break out into some brainstorm groups. So if there aren't any other questions, I have a question about food forests to Nancy and maybe Jeremy, but there's this concept, food forests, and it's like the interspersal of like edible plants on the grounds and shrubs and trees and stuff. And it's tricky in Alaska because our climate is so cold, so you don't have a lot of diversity. But as the climate changes, especially in our neighborhoods and around our community where our people are, do you see potential new ways for doing that here in our town, in our Central Peninsula hood? Oh, yeah, dang it, I didn't do the thing.
There you are.
Sorry, Nancy.
Great question, Caitlin. River City Books has a edible landscape, and that was their intention when they built the new facility there, to put all edibles in. And we have a great variety of edible shrubs, edible ground covers, and fruit trees even. So it's quite doable. They tend to be fairly, a lot of them are moose fodder. So, they would need to be protected, but once they're established, I think that can be, manageable, getting them to the maturity. So we've got, of course, currants and just lots of stuff. I don't know how available some of the ground covers are yet. It'd be great if we had a better source for things like lingonberries, little plugs. If someone wanted to start a little lingonberry ground cover, that's the tricky part with some of these, especially the more native ones that we enjoy. But there's a lot of in the viburnum family varieties that aren't native, but that are very edible for the wildlife. And does that answer your question, Caitlin?
Yeah, and this is a segue into thank you, Nancy. It's a segue into groups, and there'll be 2 groups on the computer. So Ben will go ahead and start making 2 breakout rooms, and then we'll count off as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll have like a 15-minute small group conversation. And the goal really is to use all of your brain power to generate some ideas for how this solution could really work best for all of us here, our neighborhoods, our community. What could retreeing look like here for us, and how could it be most beneficial? Certainly, we could just wait for the borough to do everything. We could just individually go out and do stuff in our personal backyards. But I do think there's this like community level solution that we can do together that would be really effective and really beneficial. And so that's kind of what the brainstorm is going to be. We'll take 15 minutes.
All right, and
Nancy, quick question.
Yeah, you can. And Ben, sorry.
well, there's a question in the chat on Zoom.
Oh, there's a question on the chat as well. Sorry.
Okay, hi Nancy.
Hi.
I missed your presentation. And I just wanted to ask if there is going to be ability for the private landowners in planting these trees to have what you did for me at my property. I came in the early 70s and I built my first house out of beetle killed trees on a homestead. And the mentality has changed a lot since then. And I know there's a big difference between planting trees and landscaping. Okay, just planting a tree is not landscaping. And when I hired Nancy to draw a landscaping plan, I forget how much I paid her, but it wasn't enough because of the beautification of the lot, okay, the property value. And that's what I'm getting here is the message to the person who wants to plant trees. If they have a landscape architect, okay, and if they have a plan, their property value is going to increase as the years go by. I've seen it happen and it's worth every penny. But it takes somebody like Nancy who can envision, you know, just a vacant lot with a house on it into a beautifully landscaped commercial piece of property. So Nancy, will you be having those things or are you available for the property owners? And can it be part of this outreach to let people know that if you don't want to just plant a tree and watch a moose eat it, to have an architect do something that's going to enhance the property value?
Maybe, perhaps, especially if it's, I have a couple ideas. One is this very basic thing I call the Walkin Wave, where I come to the property and we look around and we say, well, what are your goals? What like sort of big things can we do to enhance this, you know, the curb appeal or help direct people to the entryway. There's very simple things that you can do. And so those sort of things, I think it's really kind of what you're talking about. I have a tree to plant. If I plant it here, it'll look stupid. If I plant it here, it'll accomplish X, Y, and Z. And so those are the sort of things that my training can help with. I've also taught a class where if we had a group of people together, I could teach some of the fundamentals and the thought processes that they can go home then and apply in their individual lots. So those are a couple options. I'm professionally though, I am very busy. So yeah.
All right, thank you, Nancy. That was good. So we're gonna go in our breakout sessions. Oh, okay, there's a chat room question.
Yes, one more question before we go into Q&A. Eliza in the chat asks, what kind of space do you recommend for planting 100 trees? In the case of planting a big field of trees, would you plant a big variety for resilience?
All right, want to answer that? Go ahead. Yeah. Talk about.
Yeah, so I come from more of the commercial side of forestry. And so what we go for industry standard is a 10 by 10 grid because you're accounting for mortality. So there's going to be that patchiness that comes out when trees do naturally die because of resources or pests or what have you. So if you have 100 trees and you're looking to reforest or afforest a space, going with the grid or doing like going with the grid, assuming that you're going to get this patchy, clumpy, natural feature of forests. And then for resilience, yeah, I'd say making sure there's a good mixture throughout. Yeah.
Okay, that's and also think of it as an artistic endeavor too. I mean, it's you can make it look good because that's kind of one of the reasons we're planting them. I've got a question in the back here.
One more question. Are there or have there been any studies that we talk about as we talk about you know, kind of diversifying our forests? Have there been any studies on exactly what type of trees to reintroduce or introduce? The only reason I bring this up is I spent 8 years in the timber industry in Vermont, and they had a program. I worked for IP and Wagner, and when you cut a tree, plant a tree, basically. And what they were planting was what would, bring the greatest return as far as dollar value. And I've never seen a forest become toxic so fast in my life. The upside was, population, the moose population quadrupled in a short period of time because they had all kinds of, whistlewood maple and things like that to eat. But then everything else died off. So I'm just thinking, 23,000 trees a year is great. But if we plant the wrong thing, reintroducing something, turn into invasive species really, really quickly. So I'm just wondering if there's any scientific guidance on that.
Well, science is an interesting thing. Science used to be simple, but it isn't anymore. There's a lot of different, and I can say there's a natural process that occurs in the wildlands on the borough land and on the refuge, and there's a succession that occurs. And we have, there are times you talk to the first forester that came here, wandered through here, took a long way around getting to Homer, and he commented that there weren't any moose. Well, part of our succession and our science in here is that, we need periodic, breathers for our moose browse for the moose to get beyond the moose size. And so we're dealing with people. And believe it or not, man is part of the environment, part of the ecology today. And because of that, we can plant apples here. Because man can put, and woman can, sorry, I gotta get those gender pronouns right, I'll get in all kinds of trouble. But we can put a gate around a tree. We can alter the ecology. And what I envision is we're looking at our backyards, and we have a lot of control over our backyards. We can water our trees. Don't want to water them forever, but maybe you do. Maybe you want to turn them into rain gardens where you're catching all those runoff from your roofs to keep your white pine growing. You can grow white pine here if you can provide enough water. You can do a lot of. You can grow an oak tree here. I know there are oak trees growing at Moose Pass. Gotta water them because they don't like our 17 inches of water here. I mean, nothing likes our 17 inches of water. So there's been some studies, and I think the best studies is what we've all learned in our backyards. I can tell you what grows in my backyard. I can tell you that mountain hemlock does not grow in my backyard, and I know why. I'm not going to plant any more of them. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I avoided it really well, I think I did.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as we, group up and jump into the breakout session, if somebody has some ideas on, how to plant 23,000 trees in a year. Just want to make sure we're planting the right tree. It's not just simply.
Right, okay. And can we're gonna get to our breakout sessions here. So what I would like in the breakout sessions, in your individual and online too, Cyberland, is think about this as a project. How would you go about retreeing and then go says, oh, I'm gonna take all the inmates at Wildwood and we're gonna go through, the Spruce Woodlands subdivision in Kenai. I mean, that would be just that's the idea of you coming in. We're gonna plant spruce. We're gonna plant Colorado blue spruce through the whole community. I mean, that's design a project and how would you do it and be creative and think about all the things that you've learned so far. We have tree shortages. Okay, where are we going to get the trees? We're going to go pull for them out of HEA power lines, or we're going to. Caitlin didn't tell me about that one, but think about creative ways, or maybe we just do one big tree sale and Mitch shows up with his tractor trailer and I dump off 25,000 trees. Actually, I can put 25,000 back in my pickup truck. So think of that when you're doing and what would work, because it has to work for the public, it has to work for the neighbors, it has to work for the people who are going to own these trees. That's why we're talking about the backyard. So you got your charge? Yeah. Okay, all right, Caitlin, split us out.
All right. I think there are six folks on Zoom, so I'll go to 2 groups of 3. And then we got 15, 16 folks in the room, so we'll just count off by 5s. And I'm gonna have you and you lead a group. That's cool. Yep, and then so 1, 2, Ben is 3, Jeremy is 4, David is 5. Okay. 1, 2, Ashley, 3, 4, 5. Don't forget your number. Bill. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right, so do you remember? So ones are with Mitch, 2s are with Dakota, 3s are with Ben, 4s are with Jeremy over there, 5s are with David. All right, we got about 15 minutes, and really the charge is to brainstorm like what the solution project could look like here. And you guys have some sticky notes. It's probably a good idea to brainstorm on a sticky note, especially for the less talkative folks. So feel free to write down some ideas on your sticky notes. And then at the end of the 15 minutes, we're gonna come back and do a little go around with the groups and present. All right, go. Yeah.
Where do those of us online go?
Yeah.
So our Zoomers, Ben is moving you into 2 breakout rooms and you're automatically getting assigned.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
Yep, Jim, you're in charge of 1. And, oh boy, can you split up Nancy and Jim?
So,
Yeah, here. Yeah, we'll sort you guys out. Don't you worry.
Okay.
Oh, you don't have to do that. You can just. Here, wait. You can just move this one. You can just go move 2. Sorry, because you don't want those 2 in the same one.
Okay.
So move 2. Room 2. There you go. And then
Somebody has
Tanya,
to.
yeah, move 2. Here, hit that move 2. Room 1, yeah. And then open all rooms. There you go. Leave it.
They're doing it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, they're all doing it.
all right.
Yeah.
I guess it's you and you.
You're not a 3?
I'm not a 3.
Yeah.
She's not here.
Would you say that as a former reporter? Yeah.
Well, I guess I have more questions. And then other ones were the trees. I didn't have time to ask, but like, do you know any research into like Jeremy's question, basically? Like what?
Well, I think 2 people that were up here were the ones that.
Yeah.
Providing all kinds of trees and spruce. Sounds like, you got like 5 or 6 maybe.
Yeah.
Now we've got it. You probably want to do a little research on soil. What's spruce trees are all drying up. Black obviously has very poor soil.
I think it would take a lot of research. Like there's the question. Like what trees are going to do, what trees are going to create the most diverse species.
This is a public land. Up, or do you think in his backyard?
I was thinking mostly backyard. Yeah, then there's also what trees are people going to want. Because they're voluntarily in their backyard. I know. And then there's the question like, what is it cost?
Depends on how much water you gotta put on the problem. Usually it's just providing protection when it's low.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of lodgepole pine. Some of those. Who's got one of them? They've got real creative bark all the way around, except for about a 2-inch strip, and then wrapping it there, and I ended up growing for another 10 years. Spot.
Yeah.
Last one, I don't know too much about other species of trees. But as far as logistics on actually getting people to do it.
Yeah. It would be a pretty huge logistical effort, especially, well, like depending on like what we'd have to figure out where to find that. 3,000 would come from, where they go. We'd have to balance the two. A lot of these trees have some nice
Yeah, if it's backyard stuff, I think it's quite different. I guess public land, I was thinking more about parcel space. Space.
It would be a difficult project.
The issue is getting people.
It takes a lot of time.
Like how do you know?
They can take a lot of time too. Like it doesn't seem like it's all.
Yeah, I think state forestry sounds like they've done some of that in the past. I remember after the bark beetle issue back in the
Yeah.
Yes, there were a bunch of lodgepole pine trees that were planted out. Look at the history of how they survive, what's working. It seems like something you could rally a bunch of small kids into.
Yeah.
Plant trees, have somebody show them.
Yeah.
How many trees have you planted in the last 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, zero. Just that one outside.
What do you think of the logistics of this? Like say we do this with like a voluntary program for people with trees in their backyard. Like how do you think we would manage the logistics of sourcing the trees, finding people who wanted to plant them, finding out what kind of trees they wanted to plant? It seems like a very complicated logistics. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that whatever we've done in the past, like solar rides, the compost project had very dedicated volunteer. I don't know if that would be stipend for that. I know we talked about that in the past, but it seems that kind of, we only have so much capacity. Kind of seeing somebody really passionate about it to kind of head that, or at least, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's grants out there, the small ones that go for that, or if any of the ones that Jim was talking about.
Yeah, probably going and checking with people who have done some of those projects already.
Like we've done in the past, we can support them where we're at in the studio and all those logistical things. But to actually get somebody dedicated to that seems the only way to be working successful. We try to do it ourselves, you know.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the forestry plan that Jim mentioned the city sold out in 2013?
I don't know. I know. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought Mitch might have said
Yeah, that would be worth thinking.
I liked a lot of the ideas that Sam already put out there and do. Even if it's supporting a school, I mean, if it's not in the school, it's kind of.
Yeah, I think there's some good educators that would probably be excited about doing that in the springtime. Right at the end of the school year, get a bunch of kids outside.
Yeah. So they're great. I don't even know when's a good season to plant.
I would think you'd want to have the ground warm enough.
Right.
You probably have to wait until.
Yeah, I guess that would be hard to teach in schools if it's like, because that's kind of gets out, short, small window.
The season would be another hard thing about this. Like, we not only have to get 23,000 trees in people's backyards for that 2 months.
Anybody wants.
Pretty worthwhile.
They had a fire up by Big Lake. Parents homestead in 96. One of the neighbors got like 10,000 trees and planted a whole bunch of trees. Every once in a while I come across it.
Where did you get them from? Were they just from a nursery outside?
Bottom from someplace outside. I don't see too many of them. He's got some right in his yard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He has water.
We probably have to get the nurseries involved somehow. Like big commercial nurseries.
But you just say you gotta get your order in January.
We need to do that, then we'll have to reach next.
I think
Mitch has got some full bag on the side for this whole project.
That's planning about being sold out.
Yeah, I think this would be more than a 3-year project. Like, we would have to like, we would have to We would have to get some trees. Well, first we would have to decide what trees.
I want to decide that first.
Yeah.
Like a specific neighborhood.
Neighborhood or line along the course or something.
Probably have to find like 2 dozen sites really. And decide what trees. Either get an order in or kind of guerrilla harvesting. Like when you transplant trees, you just like take them from one place and plant them in another, and you have to.
You gotta get
put them in.
cut too many of them off. There's gotta be a little thematic for a tree.
Yeah, we need volunteers with trucks, definitely.
I've seen several little. It's gonna make a dent as well. I know it's makes them unattractive, but
Those trees out there, they're pretty healthy.
those trees.
I lost four trees this fall. 4 of them are 3 of them were during that windstorm together. Kind of fell like they were. We had a lot of rain. No,
Dead trees are like.
yeah. So,
Yeah, one of those ones going to pretty good size snap off.
and hung up in the lines there.
Our lines.
And it's falling like 3 different times. Then we had to send them pictures. We couldn't get it or whatever. It's a good time to talk about it. It's on my mind.
There was a guy that grew up on a tree farm back east. He came out and by himself in an old skidder. He harvested probably about 400 trees.
How many trees this year?
And then he moved to I think just 3 years, he just cut trees. Some of those. Some of those might be accidental too.
Birch, you get a better chance.
Wild birch.
You have a timer though?
We should have had it going. That's 7:25.
You got a schedule, you gotta get all these things done. I got, where are the sites, what trees to plant, where are the trees, planting, lined up, plant trees, protecting.
And then I guess another question is that you after you get to plan. How much follow-up?
Yeah.
2 years later. 4 years. Like 20,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it expanded. Right. There's still place for spruce trees. There's so many of them, they grow well. Spray them or protect them if there are.
Yeah, is there a certain age when they actually get infected?
Usually it's gotta be about a 6 inch thing. The older they are, the more susceptible they are.
I think the climate trends are also spruce. The climate trends are also spruce. Ground's dry.
Forestry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Project.
Yeah, we don't want
No, I mean, the idea of, securing grant money to expand like just in terms of like creating a sustainable spruce noodle. Initial 23,000, whatever.
And then look at us.
I mean, I don't know how you would do that without necessarily.
Yeah, I don't think it's to be a commercial operation.
Really good enough for
Like the little cell.
Yeah, it's hard to get to 22,000 trees at a time.
Yeah.
Took a lot of trees.
Give people a warning to come back. So what, are we branded it out, brainstormed out?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, is your 1 minute warning? Get all of your brainstorms out of your brain. And then select somebody to be the idea teller for your group. And then I'll take notes up here. Draw straws or something. And we'll tell Ben, the folks on Zoom to come back and we can do a little go around.
Jim's program, the Alaska Community Forest Council has a lot of info, National Arbor Day. That I don't think there's a lack of educational materials, but I think there's a lack of educational venues, like a session of this and things that are available, like the best trees to plant, going to something for lay persons. We got into need to partner, a lot of partnering organizations, the garden clubs, conservation districts, the food bank, the local schools, care and maintenance, having a moose plant. That was one of the things, because planting the tree, we have to make sure that people, once they plant them, they actually survive. We came up with who pays for this, because we talked about how it might be important that some homeowners have buy-in. So some of these trees are pretty expensive. And I think it would be far to expect people to get the tree for actual free. So there would have to be, it would be good if there was a partnering and that would actually leverage any money. Or maybe people just don't want to deal with that and are willing to buy it and they just need a place. Sourcing. Where do we get trees? And that's important too. I think we did mention that our businesses here, we could support our local businesses. Because that would get us a lot of community support. And then we started talking about schools and how our playgrounds need to have a lot of trees planted on them. And then for those of you who don't know, it's not the schools that are taking care of the playgrounds and the grounds, but it's the borough. So now you're into this tree triangle, I guess. You know, you want to plant a tree and you just spend your time bouncing around in that tree triangle. But as long as you're not trying to build anything, but if you're digging a hole, it gets to be a big government deal about the stuff there before I get in trouble. So that's what came from group 1.
Group 2.
Right, I feel like group 1 stole a lot of our ideas.
You can just add on to what they've already done, because we do need to, the librarians are gonna want to come in here and do us.
Okay, so something maybe that we could add to this is we felt like we wanted to also talk about developing a pipeline for trees. We could want to plant all the trees in the world, but if you can't get them, it's hard to plant those trees. And so we thought we would work on education of that, try to figure out ways to get nurseries, way to develop our own trees both locally and through the government. Education was another one we talked a lot about. Our group had made, Dakota's new here for a few months. My wife Jess and I have been here for 2 months. So there's not a, for me, education was a big part, not knowing how the beetle works and what are some of the causes and why it works that way. So we added an education factor to it. We had a lot of the same things that group 1 spoke about. That probably wraps this up.
Very good at planning community events. Welcome to town.
Group 3.
Five.
I guess I'll be the spokesman for 3. The last thing that got thrown out there on the group 2 thing was education. And one of the things that we talked about was planning around schools, but also incorporating some classwork with an educator coming out in the late school season here and getting a bunch of kids involved in this whole program. It's part of a community effort with school kids and also to get them outdoors in the sunshine. So that's a good one. We also talked about, how the schedule might work for, especially for a larger program. If it wasn't just backyard stuff, but if we're going to do a big area for a community, we're sold out on trees already in January. You got to get your time in. So this is like a 2-year plan that we need to have for these projects at least. So then we need to have somebody who can kind of take it and be in charge of it too over that period. Otherwise, it's gonna just kind of founder. So brainstorming on where some of these things might go, and then trying to figure out what we need to put there as far as types of trees. Go ahead and order them, and then line up planting crews for the next year. Protect them after they're planted. It's just kind of an ongoing thing. Follow up to see how things actually turned out after.
It's a little bit hard to hear online.
I'm sorry, I'm not a public speaker either. I'm Caitlin's dad, by the way, so she got all that skill. So here you go, Caitlin.
Thanks, Dad. I love you. Group 4 and 5, you should just come up here together, tag team this. And then we'll jump online and Eliza, and then maybe Jim.
All right, so for our group, we wanted to focus on trying to get trees from where there's too many trees to trees where there's not enough trees, places where there are not enough trees. So we thought that maybe, I know 20 years ago, there was in a lot of places, there was a thinning of the spruce bark beetle kill. And now a lot of those places are young forests. Nearby where I used to live was a lot of the land was managed by the Alaska Mental Health Trust, who is open to like allowing people to come on to their property and like, yeah. So that'd be cool. Let's see, when you buy trees in bulk as a group, you can save a lot of money. So if we could find interest for something next year, you know, 10,000 trees split amongst 50 people, you know, that could be a way of funding like personal for your property trees. Let's see, and then the college has a large amount of land that is basically all now dead standing trees. So they could be a good partner, maybe if they want to do something with all those dead trees, maybe if we do come up with a plan, they could, you know, yeah.
NPC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something.
Okay.
Maybe the parks, I don't know. You know. Savannah.
Okay, I'll go over the test. We agreed with most of the things that everybody said, but one of the things we talked about was that for low hanging fruit, we think Saltashi might actually be a great organization to start with because they lost so many of their trees and they're a perfect combo of borough and nonprofit land. Because the borough actually owns it, but Saltashi is all volunteers and they're all super passionate volunteers. So that'd be a great place to start with planting trees. We talked a little bit about this group buying idea for neighborhoods because so many neighborhoods lost all their trees. We talked about grants and working with the municipalities, and we talked about groups like this, but with a group like Siri or the other tribes. I think that got most of the things we talked about.
Fine. Just start talking, Zoomers. What do you want me to add to the board?
We had two ideas in our group. One was to really promote Arbor Day here locally and do a lot of multiple sites, tree planting parties, and have all the, all the prep done, the sites identified, the volunteers bringing in the trees. So they're all ready, the people on site, the experts on site to show people how to plant them, bring the kids, all over the Central Peninsula. Preferably, like 5 or 10 or 20 sites, different kinds. Maybe some people would want to do a food forest and some group would want to do a large forest and, whatever it all is. Different varieties, but all on the same day, coordinated, advertised heavily. Of course, it would be for 2023 because I'm not going to get there for this year. And then the other idea was to have some kind of a tree sort of person or website page that kind of puts together all those people who have baby trees with those people who want to plant baby trees throughout the year, so that there's some kind of a nice mix and match person, like, I don't know what you call that, but like a place or person that kind of manages all the tree planting for the area and is known for this and can be like step up and be that. We have that already in terms of knowledge and information and education in the form of Mitch and other people, but for like an actual knowledge, like person who's on the ground, like who knows where the trees are and where the sites are. So yeah, that was our two ideas.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna take a picture and I'll send it around to everyone who emailed and registered, and I really appreciate everyone who came and who helped. And then Jim, you got anything to throw on the pile?
Okay, a few things, and I put these in the chat. One is a link to the Arbor Day Foundation's Tree Campus K-12. Love to see schools. Tanya had a really good point as all the work she's done as a retired, volunteer work, but as also a retired teacher, is that kids are impressionable. So if they can learn the value of trees, now plant trees, and then before they know it, they'll see just how big those trees will grow. One of our favorite
Can you
sayings
repeat the name of that website?
It's on the chat. And I also want to mention that our program is about to announce another round of tree vitalization grants for school tree planting projects. These are for schools, but they can be planted, do the plantings on non-federal public lands. We've got about another $15,000 worth of funding we need to get out. Our group also talked about picking up on Mitch's idea is HEA got public easements where people could come out and dig up trees that eventually they're gonna have to cut down anywhere. We're quite intrigued by that as a source. Anne had an idea, is there any way we can grow trees from existing cones? Get little seedlings going from the cones that are available. That's what we got there.
Well, thank you. We're gonna have to move this party outside so that we are allowed to come back to the library. But thank you so much, everybody, for participating, and we'll be sure to send around community announcements and an email. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, especially to the organizers.
Post-it note pen collection. In there, yeah. Let's see here. Traffic light.